I should have known something was wrong the moment my mother-in-law offered us her house. Standing in her pristine living room, watching her perfectly manicured hands gesture at the crown molding and hardwood floors, I felt a familiar knot forming in my stomach. But desperation has a way of making you ignore your instincts. My name is Harper, and this is the story of how I lost everything to save my family. It just breaks my heart to see you and Ryan struggling with rent, Evelyn said, her voice dripping with concern that never quite reached her eyes. And sweet little Emma deserves a proper home, doesn't she? I watched my 5-year-old daughter twirl in the empty space, her blonde curls catching the afternoon light. Ryan stood by the bay window, hands in his pockets, wearing that boyish grin that still made my heart skip after 12 years together. "Mom, this is too much," he said, but I could hear the excitement in his voice. "The market value of this place." "Oh, hush," Evelyn waved him off. "What good is this big house doing me now? Besides, I'll be much happier in my condo by the lake. And this way, I can see my grandbaby whenever I want." There it was. The string attached to her generosity, wrapped so carefully in grandmother's love that refusing would make me look ungrateful. "We'd need to discuss the terms," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "The mortgage payments, maintenance costs." "Harper, darling," Evelyn cut in, placing her hand on my arm. Her grip was gentle but firm. "You're always so practical. It's admirable, really, how you manage with your— what do you call it? Digital consulting?" Ryan chuckled. "Mom, Harper's business is doing great. She just landed that startup account last month." Of course," Evelyn smiled. "Though I always thought a traditional job would be more stable. Especially with a young child." Before I could respond, Emma ran over, tugging at my sleeve. "Mommy, can I have the big room upstairs? The one with the window seat?" "We haven't decided anything yet, sweetie," I said, but Ryan was already nodding. "Of course you can, princess. That was my old room, you know. Mom, remember when I used to read comics up there for hours?" Evelyn's face softened as she looked at her son. "You were such a thoughtful boy. Always dreaming big dreams." I bit back a comment about how those big dreams had led to 3 failed business ventures and a mountain of debt I was still helping pay off. Instead, I watched them reminisce, feeling like an outsider in what would supposedly be my new home. "The papers are already drawn up," Evelyn announced, pulling a manila envelope from her designer handbag. "My lawyer made it very simple. You'll take over the mortgage payments, and I'll gift you the equity I've built up. It's the least I can do for my only son." Ryan's eyes lit up. "Mom, this is incredible. Harper, can you believe it? No more cramped apartment." I looked around the spacious room, trying to picture our furniture here, our photos on the walls. Our life transplanted into this museum of Ryan's childhood. But all I could see was Evelyn, dropping by unannounced, critiquing my parenting, undermining my decisions. "We should sleep on it," I suggested. "Make sure we understand all the implications." "Oh, there's no rush," Evelyn said smoothly. "Though I should mention, I've had other offers. And the market being what it is." Ryan turned to me, his expression a mixture of hope and pleading. Emma was still spinning, lost in dreams of her new room. I felt the walls of the trap closing in, lined with guilt and obligation and the desperate need to give my daughter a better life. "Where do we sign?" I heard myself say. As Evelyn produced a pen from her bag with triumphant efficiency, I caught a glimpse of something in her expression, not victory, exactly, but satisfaction. Like a spider watching its web do exactly what it was designed to do. I just didn't realize then that I wasn't the only one caught in it. It took exactly 3 weeks for the cracks to start showing. I was in our new kitchen, trying to concentrate on a client call, when Evelyn breezed in through the back door without knocking. Again. "Oh, are you still doing your little computer meetings?" she asked, loud enough that I had to mute myself. She began unloading grocery bags onto the counter, groceries we hadn't asked for, didn't need, and now would be obligated to thank her for. I wrapped up the call as quickly as I could, knowing from experience that ignoring her would only make things worse. Evelyn, we've talked about this. I work from home. These calls are how I make my living. Of course, dear. Though Ryan mentioned you might be looking for something more stable? She arranged organic produce in the fridge with surgical precision. My friend Margaret's daughter just started at that lovely accounting firm downtown. They're always looking for qualified people. The suggestion hung in the air like smoke. I gripped my coffee mug tighter. My business is doing well. The Thompson account alone covered 3 months of mortgage payments. She closed the fridge door with a soft click. Ryan says the payments are becoming a bit of a strain. My head snapped up. What? He's worried about you, dear. All this pressure you put on yourself, trying to prove something. It's not healthy for Emma. Before I could respond, Ryan walked in, fresh from his morning run. He kissed his mother's cheek, then grabbed an apple from the counter. Mom, you're a lifesaver. We were running low on groceries. We went shopping yesterday, I said. Oh. He took a bite, looking genuinely confused. Must have missed that. You didn't miss it. You were there. You insisted on those expensive steaks that, I stopped, noticing the familiar glazed look in his eyes. The one that appeared whenever money came up. Speaking of expenses, Evelyn chimed in, I noticed the gardener hasn't been by. The roses are looking rather neglected. We cancelled the gardener, I said. We're trying to cut back on unnecessary. But darling, proper maintenance is crucial for property value. You wouldn't want to let the house deteriorate, would you? After everything we've done to help? Ryan nodded, mouth full of apple. Mom's right, babe. We should reinstate the service. With what money? I demanded. The same money that's supposedly making the mortgage payments a strain? An uncomfortable silence fell. Ryan and Evelyn exchanged a look I couldn't quite read. I think Evelyn said carefully that if you're struggling so much with the basic upkeep, perhaps we should revisit the arrangement. We're not struggling, I said. We're budgeting. There's a difference. Of course there is, dear. Her smile was sympathetic in a way that made my skin crawl. I just worry about Emma growing up in an environment of financial stress. Mom's just trying to help, Ryan added, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. I looked between them, my husband and his mother, standing together against me in my own kitchen. No, not my kitchen. Her kitchen, with its custom cabinets and marble countertops that I was apparently failing to deserve. I have another call, I said, gathering my laptop. As I left, I heard Evelyn's voice, soft but clear. I hate seeing him worry like this. Perhaps if she'd consider a real job. I closed my office door and leaned against it, breathing deeply. Through the window, I could see Emma in the backyard, carefully arranging her dolls on the grass. She looked up and waved, and I forced a smile, waving back. My phone buzzed, a text from Ryan, Mom's staying for dinner. Says she'll cook. Problem solved. I stared at the message, remembering the groceries I'd bought yesterday. Now probably relegated to the back of the fridge behind Evelyn's organic offerings. Another small battle lost in a war I was only beginning to understand I was fighting. My laptop pinged with an email notification. The Thompson account, they wanted to scale back their contract. Family business, the message said. Going in a different direction. I wondered, with a sudden chill, just how many of Margaret's friends worked with digital marketing firms. The notification from our joint bank account hit my phone at 3 a.m. I'd been lying awake anyway, listening to Ryan's steady breathing beside me, wondering when we'd stop talking about anything real. The screen's blue glow illuminated a transaction I didn't recognize, $12,000 to Investment Opportunity LLC. My stomach dropped. We didn't have $12,000 to invest in anything. I slipped out of bed and padded down to the kitchen with my laptop. The banking website revealed more surprises, a series of withdrawals over the past month, each one carefully sized to fly under my radar. Restaurant charges for places I'd never been to. A jewelry store purchase dated last Tuesday, when Ryan was supposedly at a business dinner. The sun was rising when I heard footsteps on the stairs. Ryan appeared in his workout clothes, then froze when he saw me at the kitchen table. "You're up early," he said, reaching for his water bottle. "Investment Opportunity LLC," I said. "Want to tell me about it?" He took a long drink before answering. "It's a tech startup. Mom's friend's son is the CEO. Ground floor opportunity. You took $12,000 from our account without talking to me. I was going to tell you when it paid off." He smiled, that boyish smile that used to make everything okay. "Come on, babe. You know I've got good instincts for these things." "Like the food truck venture? Or the cryptocurrency mining setup that nearly burned down our apartment?" His face hardened. "That's not fair. I'm trying to build something for our future." "Our future?" I pulled up the banking app. "What about these dinner charges? The jewelry store? You're tracking my spending now?" He ran a hand through his hair. "Real healthy, Harper. Real trusting." Before I could respond, the back door opened. Evelyn walked in, carrying a basket of fresh muffins. "Good morning, dears." "Oh, you look tired, Harper. Trouble sleeping?" "Mom," Ryan said, "can you give us a minute?" "Of course, darling." She set down the basket. "Though if you're discussing the investment opportunity, I think it's wonderful. So much better than relying on uncertain income streams." I stared at her. "You knew about this?" "I might have made the introduction," she said, smoothing her blouse. "Richard's such a brilliant young man. Harvard Business School, you know." "That money was for the mortgage," I said. "And Emma's school fees." "Oh, don't worry about that." Evelyn waved her hand. "I've already spoken to the school. They're happy to wait for payment, given our family's long association." The room spun slightly. "You spoke to Emma's school about our finances?" "Mom was trying to help," Ryan said. "Which is more than I can say." "Finish that sentence," I dared him. "Please." Emma's voice broke through the tension. "Mommy? Why is everyone yelling?" She stood in the doorway in her unicorn pajamas, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Evelyn immediately swooped in. "No one's yelling, sweetheart. Grandma brought muffins. Would you like one?" "Emma, go upstairs," I said. "I'll be up in a minute to help you dress for school." "But Grandma's muffins. Now, please." After she left, Ryan shook his head. "See? This is exactly why I didn't tell you about the investment. You're so rigid about everything." "Rigid?" I laughed, and it sounded strange even to me. "Is that what we're calling financial responsibility now?" Perhaps, Evelyn interjected, "if you're finding the household expenses so overwhelming, we should discuss alternative arrangements." "Alternative arrangements," I repeated. "You mean like the accounting job with Margaret's daughter? Or maybe I should just stay home entirely, let Ryan handle everything?" "That might be best for everyone," Evelyn said softly. "Especially Emma." I looked at Ryan, waiting for him to defend me. He studied his water bottle instead. "I need to get Emma ready for school," I said, standing up. "And then I need to call our bank." "Harper," Ryan called after me, "don't do anything rash." I paused at the stairs, not turning around. Rash would have been trusting you with our savings. Again. As I climbed the steps, I heard Evelyn's voice drift up, poor dear. The stress is clearly getting to her. You know, Margaret's daughter just started seeing the most wonderful therapist. I reached for my phone, hands shaking, and opened my banking app again. It was time to make some alternative arrangements of my own. The first thing I did after opening my new private bank account was call June Patterson. She'd lived next door to us in our old apartment building. And despite Evelyn's dismissal of her as that retired schoolteacher, she remained the wisest person I knew. Come over, she said immediately. I'll put the kettle on. June's small house felt like a sanctuary after the suffocating grandeur of Evelyn's, our home. Emma immediately curled up with June's ancient tabby cat while I sat at the kitchen table, hands wrapped around a mug of chamomile tea. I've been moving money, I admitted. Small amounts, whenever I can. It feels wrong. Wrong like stealing, or wrong like lying to yourself? June asked, sliding a plate of cookies toward Emma. Before I could answer, my phone buzzed. Another bank notification. I nearly dropped it when I saw the amount, $50,000, transferred out of our joint savings to something called Caldwell Family Trust. Honey, you've gone white as a sheet, June said. I showed her the screen. Her eyes narrowed behind her reading glasses. When did you say Ryan's new investment opportunity started? Last month, right after. I stopped, the pieces clicking into place. Right after Evelyn convinced us to take over the house payments. One cookie is enough, Emma sweetheart, June said, then turned back to me. And the mortgage payments? Have they actually been going through? My hands shook as I checked the account history. The last 3 mortgage payments had been reversed due to insufficient funds. Each time, a deposit from E. Caldwell had covered the difference, plus exactly enough for Ryan's investment contributions. She's funding his gambling habit, I whispered. Only this time she's calling it investing. And using your family's security as collateral, June added grimly. Question is, what are you going to do about it? My phone buzzed again, a text from Ryan, where are you? Mom's worried. Says Emma's missing piano lessons. Emma doesn't take piano lessons, I said out loud. Not yet, Emma piped up. Grandma says I start next week. She already bought the piano. I stared at my daughter, her face smeared with cookie crumbs and complete innocence. When did Grandma tell you this? Yesterday. She said Mommy's too busy with her computer to take me, so she'll do it instead. June reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Harper, listen to me carefully. This isn't just about money anymore. I know, I said, watching Emma pet the cat. They're trying to erase me. Piece by piece. Another text from Ryan, Mom says if you're feeling overwhelmed, she can take Emma for a few days. Give you time to rest. The room felt suddenly airless. June must have noticed because she sent Emma to play in the garden where we could see her through the window. I have about 15,000 saved, I said quietly. Not enough to start over, but... Stay here, June interrupted. The guest room's yours as long as you need it. I couldn't. You can and you will. Her voice took on the tone that had managed classrooms for 30 years. Besides, I've been meaning to tell you. Remember that startup I invested in last year? The one you helped me vet? I nodded. I'd spent weeks researching the company for her, making sure it wasn't another scam. They're going public next month. My financial advisor says my initial investment will multiply several times over. She smiled. I could use someone with your expertise to help manage things. Hope flickered, dangerous and fragile. Through the window, I watched Emma chasing butterflies in June's garden, free and happy in a way she hadn't been in months. My phone buzzed one more time. An email from our mortgage company, final notice of default. If I do this, I said, they'll never forgive me. June's face hardened. Honey, after what they're doing, forgiveness isn't what you should be worried about. I took a deep breath and opened my laptop. It was time to start documenting everything. The call from Emma's school came during a client meeting. I almost ignored it, but something made me excuse myself to answer. The nurse's voice was carefully neutral. Mrs. Caldwell, Emma's running a fever of 102. We've been trying to reach someone for the past hour. I'm her mother. I'm coming right now. I was already grabbing my keys. Who else did you call? Well, your mother-in-law is listed as the primary contact. She said she'd handle it, but... My heart stopped. But what? She hasn't arrived yet. And Emma's asking for you. I broke every speed limit getting to the school. Emma was curled up on the nurse's cot, her face flushed and hair damp with sweat. When she saw me, she burst into tears. Mommy, Grandma said she was coming, but... SHH, baby. I'm here now. I gathered her burning little body in my arms. Let's get you home. My phone rang, Evelyn. I let it go to voicemail. At home, I carried Emma upstairs to her room, past the gleaming baby grand piano that had appeared in our living room last week. As I tucked her in, she grabbed my hand. Don't go, she whispered. Stay with me like before. Like before? Before we moved here. When you didn't have so many meetings. The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I'd been so focused on documenting the financial manipulation, on building my escape fund, that I'd missed how all this was affecting Emma. My phone buzzed again. A text from Ryan. Mom says you're making a scene at school. She had it handled. I was typing a furious response when I heard the front door open. Evelyn's voice floated up the stairs. Hello? Where is everyone? Up here, I called back, keeping my voice low for Emma's sake. Where were you? Evelyn appeared in the doorway, immaculately dressed as always. I had a lunch appointment with the school board president. I couldn't just cancel. She pressed her hand to Emma's forehead. Oh dear, she is warm. I'll call my private pediatrician. I already gave her medicine, I said. She just needs rest. Well, I have that charity gala tonight, but I can cancel. No need. I'm staying home with her. But darling, you have that deadline. Ryan mentioned how behind you are on work. She smiled sympathetically. This is exactly why I've been saying. Get out. The words came out soft but sharp. I beg your pardon? Get out of my daughter's room. Get out of my house. My hands were shaking, but my voice was steady. You don't get to sweep in here and pretend you're the responsible one after leaving my sick child waiting for hours. Harper, she said, her voice taking on that familiar reasonable tone that made me feel crazy, I think you're overtired. Why don't you lie down? I can handle. Handle what? The mortgage payments you're manipulating? The investment scheme you're funding? Or maybe you'd like to handle my daughter's entire life while you're at it. Emma stirred fitfully. Evelyn's face hardened. I think we should continue this discussion downstairs. There's nothing to discuss. I sat on the edge of Emma's bed, taking her small hand in mine. I'm done letting you handle things. Consider carefully what you're saying, Evelyn said quietly. Ryan and Emma need stability. Structure. A proper family environment. Is that what you call this? Proper? She stepped closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. Do you really think you can manage on your own? With your uncertain income? The courts tend to favor stable home environments. The threat hung in the air between us. Through the haze of fury, I felt something shift inside me, the last thread of obligation snapping clean. "You should leave now," I said. "And take the piano with you." After she left, I held Emma while she slept, watching her fever gradually break. My phone kept buzzing. Ryan, Evelyn, probably the school board president by now. I ignored them all and opened my laptop one-handed. Subject: urgent meeting request. To Family Law Associates. I typed with my free hand while Emma slept against my shoulder, her breathing finally easy and regular. The weight of her trust felt like armor against whatever was coming next. It was time to stop documenting and start fighting back. Ryan came home at midnight, smelling of expensive scotch and his mother's influence. I was in Emma's room, packing her favorite clothes into a small suitcase while she slept at June's house, still recovering from her fever. "What are you doing?" He stood in the doorway, swaying slightly. "What does it look like?" I folded Emma's unicorn sweater, the one Evelyn always said was too childish. "It looks like you're having another breakdown." He tried for his usual charming smile, but it came out wrong. "Mom says you threatened her today. Your mother left our sick daughter alone at school for hours. She had a meeting." "God, Harper, you're so..." He ran his hands through his hair. "Everything's always a conspiracy with you lately. The bank accounts, the investments, Mom's connections. The investments that emptied our savings?" I zipped the suitcase. "The connections that cost me 3 clients this month? What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, showing him the emails. "Suddenly, all my local clients are going with other consultants. Consultants recommended by your mother's friends. Funny coincidence, right?" He barely glanced at the screen. "Maybe they just found better options. More professional ones." The word hit like a slap. I pushed past him into our bedroom and pulled out my own packed bag from under the bed. "Where are you going?" "June's." "Emma's already there." His face darkened. "You took our daughter to that old woman's house without telling me?" "That old woman was there when our daughter needed someone. Unlike her grandmother. Unlike her father. You're not thinking clearly." He stepped closer, using his height to loom over me. "Mom's right, you need help. Professional help. We can find you someone." "Stop." I backed away. "Just stop pretending this is about my mental health. This is about control. Yours and Evelyn's. Everything we've done has been for this family." His voice rose, making me flinch. "The house, the investments, Emma's future." "Emma's future?" I laughed, harsh and hollow. "You mean the future where she learns it's okay for men to gamble away her security? Where she thinks it's normal for her grandmother to manipulate and isolate her mother? Don't be dramatic. I filed for divorce today." The words hung in the air between us. Ryan's face went through a series of expressions: shock, anger, and finally, something like pity. "You can't afford a divorce," he said quietly. "Mom's friends with every good lawyer in town. And with your unstable income, your emotional state." He spread his hands. "Who do you think the courts will believe?" My phone buzzed, a text from June: "Emma's asking for you. Fever's back." "I have to go," I said, grabbing my bag. Ryan blocked the doorway. "You're not taking my daughter anywhere. Move." "Or what?" He smiled, and for the first time, I saw Evelyn in his expression. "Face it, Harper. You've got nothing. No money, no connections, no proof of anything. Just paranoid accusations and a history of erratic behavior. How do you think that'll play in front of a judge?" My hand tightened on my phone, where all my carefully gathered evidence was backed up. Emails, bank statements. Recorded conversations, months of documentation that suddenly felt pathetically inadequate against the weight of Evelyn's influence. "Ryan," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "if you don't move, I'm calling the police." "Go ahead." He pulled out his own phone. "I'll call Mom's friend at the station." "You remember Captain Mitchell? From the charity gala?" For a moment, I saw it all clearly, the long game they'd been playing, the web they'd woven while I was busy trying to prove individual lies. Every connection, every friendly introduction, every social obligation had been another strand, strengthening their control. My phone buzzed again. "Emma's crying for you." I looked at Ryan, really looked at him. The man I'd loved, the father of my child, now a stranger wearing familiar skin. "Okay," I said softly. "You win." His shoulders relaxed slightly. I took advantage of that moment to duck under his arm and run, my bag banging against my hip as I flew down the stairs. His shout followed me into the night, but I didn't stop. I had nothing left except the truth. And maybe, just maybe, that would have to be enough. The email arrived 3 days after we moved into June's guest room. I almost deleted it, thinking it was spam, but the subject line caught my eye: "Startup acquisition, urgent notice to early investors." My hands shook as I read it. The small tech company I'd helped June vet last year was being bought out. Her investment, the one I'd researched so carefully, afraid of her getting scammed, had just made her a millionaire. And she'd listed me as a 10% stakeholder. The doorbell rang before I could process what this meant. Through June's peephole, I saw Ryan on the porch, looking unusually disheveled. "Harper, please," he called through the door. "We need to talk. Mom's lawyer says." "My lawyer says I don't have to talk to you," I answered. "I know about the startup money." My blood ran cold. I opened the door but kept the chain on. "How?" "Mom has friends at the investment bank." His smile was desperate, familiar. "But this is good, right? We can fix everything now. Pay off the debts, start fresh." "We?" "I've been thinking about what you said. About Mom's influence, about my spending. You were right." He pressed his forehead against the doorframe. "I miss you. Emma needs her family together." For a moment, I wavered. Then I noticed the expensive watch on his wrist, new, definitely not in our budget. "Where's Evelyn?" I asked. "What does that matter?" "Ryan. Where is she?" He straightened up, dropping the vulnerable act. "Parking the car." "Of course." I closed the door just as another car pulled into June's driveway. Evelyn emerged, immaculate as always, carrying a thick, manila envelope. My phone buzzed. A text from June, who was out with Emma, called the lawyer. "Don't sign anything." The doorbell rang again. This time, I opened it fully and stepped onto the porch. Better to face them in the open. "Harper, darling." Evelyn's voice was honey-sweet. "We have a proposal that could solve everyone's problems." "You mean your problems?" I nodded at the envelope. "Let me guess, I sign over my startup shares, and in return, you'll make the divorce and custody battle easier?" "We're offering you a chance to repair your family," she said. "Think of Emma." "I am thinking of Emma. That's why I'm done letting you manipulate us." Ryan stepped closer. "Babe, don't be stubborn. Mom's trying to help." "Like she helped with the house?" I pulled out my phone, opened a recording app. "Tell me again how that worked." "The mortgage payments, the investments, the convenient reversals whenever you needed gambling money?" "That's ridiculous," Evelyn snapped, but Ryan's face had gone pale. "You recorded us?" "Everything." I met Evelyn's eyes. "Including your conversation with the school board president about sabotaging my clients. Interesting what people say when they think they're among friends." Evelyn's composure cracked, just slightly. No one will believe. The SEC might. I smiled. They're very interested in investment fraud. Especially when it involves manipulating property titles and bank records. You wouldn't dare, Ryan said. Think about what this would do to my reputation. Your reputation? I laughed. You mean the one your mother built while you gambled away our savings? That reputation? Harper. Evelyn's voice turned pleading. We're family. No, I said quietly. Family doesn't destroy each other. Family doesn't use a 5-year-old girl as a pawn in their power games. A car pulled into the driveway, June returning with Emma. I saw the moment Evelyn registered what was about to happen, saw her reaching for her perfect grandmother mask. Leave, I said. Now. Before Emma sees you and this gets messy. This isn't over, Ryan warned. Actually, it is. I held up my phone. Unless you want these recordings going public. Your choice. They left just as June's car door opened, Emma bouncing out with an ice cream cone. She ran up the porch steps, chocolate smeared on her chin, completely unaware of what had just happened. Mommy, look! June let me get sprinkles. I hugged her close, breathing in her sweet, innocent scent. Over her head, I watched Ryan and Evelyn's car disappear down the street. Sometimes the best revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. Sometimes it's about becoming strong enough that they can't destroy you. 6 months later, I stood in our new apartment, watching Emma arrange her stuffed animals on her window seat. The view wasn't as grand as Evelyn's house, but the sunrise filled the room with a warmth I'd forgotten could exist. The divorce had been surprisingly quick once the evidence came out. Ryan's gambling debts ran deeper than even I'd known. And Evelyn's carefully constructed social network crumbled when the SEC started asking questions. Last I heard, they'd moved to another state, somewhere their name didn't make people whisper at charity galas anymore. Mommy, look! Emma held up a letter. It came under the door. My heart skipped until I recognized Evelyn's elegant handwriting. For a moment, I considered throwing it away unopened. Instead, I sat beside Emma, who was already absorbed in her toys again. Dear Harper, the letter began. By the time you read this, Ryan and I will be settled in Arizona. He's agreed to treatment for his gambling addiction. Too late for your marriage, I know, but perhaps not too late for him to be the father Emma deserves. I find myself thinking about my own mother lately. How she controlled every aspect of my life until I married young to escape her. How I swore I'd never be like her. Then spent years becoming something worse, a woman so afraid of losing control that she destroyed what she most wanted to protect. The money from the house sale is in a trust for Emma's education. No strings attached this time. It's not an apology, those require forgiveness I haven't earned. Consider it a grandmother's attempt to finally do one thing right. Take care of our girl. She has your strength, thank God, not our weakness. Evelyn. A text buzzed on my phone, June, inviting us for Sunday dinner. Through the window, I could see her tending her garden, the startup money having changed nothing about her except the size of her flower beds. Emma, I said, want to help June plant those new roses she got? Can I wear my unicorn sweater? Of course. She ran to get changed, and I looked at the letter again. Part of me wanted to tear it up, to hold on to the anger that had protected us for so long. But Emma's laughter drifted from her room, free and unguarded, reminding me that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well. My phone buzzed again, a client notification. The business was thriving now, built on reputation rather than connections. Turns out, when you stop trying to please everyone else, you find your own strength. Ready. Emma bounced back in, wearing the sweater Evelyn had hated. June says she's teaching me about thorns today. What do you know about thorns, sweetie? She considered this seriously. They hurt if you grab them wrong. But if you're careful, they protect the pretty flowers. I tucked the letter away, smiling at my daughter's accidental wisdom. That's right. They're not good or bad, they're just doing their job. Like you do your job? Protecting me? Something like that. We crossed to June's yard, where the afternoon sun turned everything golden. Emma ran ahead, fearless and happy, while I carried Evelyn's letter in my pocket, not as a burden anymore, but as a reminder that the lines between love and control, protection and possession, are often thornier than we expect. June looked up from her roses, her hands dirty but her smile clean and true. Perfect timing. These beauties need a fresh start. Don't all of us? I said, kneeling beside her in the soil. Emma joined us, carefully touching a thornless spot on the stem. Can we plant them by the window? So we can see them grow? Of course, June said. Though you have to be patient. The strongest roots take time. I watched my daughter learn about nurturing things that can both hurt and protect you, about the patience needed for real growth. The anger that had driven me for so long settled into something quieter, not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Sometimes the deepest wounds and the strongest healing come from the same place, family. The trick is learning which thorns to avoid, which to grasp carefully, and which to let go.
Lauren, I've brought some snacks. Let's have some coffee. My mother-in-law returned from shopping and handed me a bag full of peanut snacks. What? Something wrong? I'm allergic to peanuts. Oh. Was that so? Sorry. Despite knowing I'm allergic, my mother-in-law intentionally buys peanut snacks. Her blatant harassment has been exhausting. My name is Lauren, a 29-year-old housewife. I originally met my husband Jack at work, where he was my senior. Our relationship grew through work, and we eventually got married. I quit my job and moved in with Jack's parents. Initially, I thought living with his kind parents would be manageable. However, my mother-in-law's attitude changed over time. Since you're the daughter-in-law, you should do all the household chores. What? Got a problem? You're a housewife, aren't you? It's only natural since Jack is providing for you. Ah, yes. Even though my mother-in-law had promised to share household duties before our marriage, suddenly, it all fell on me. While she helps out when Jack and my father-in-law are around, during weekdays, when it's just the two of us, she dumps all the chores on me. If it were only that, it would have been better. When you wipe with water, make sure to dry it as well, or you'll leave water spots. Understood. Okay, redo it from scratch. Yes. My mother-in-law constantly criticizes my cleaning, forcing me to redo everything if she finds any spot she dislikes. It's surprising you even considered becoming a housewife. You hardly did any bridal training. It's a nuisance having someone like you marry into the family. Sorry. Learn the household chores faster, will you? Yes. While I clean, my mother-in-law lounges around watching TV, occasionally throwing complaints or sarcastic remarks my way. Before marriage, my mother-in-law was kind. So I was bewildered by how much she changed after we started living together. Why are you still cleaning there? It's nearly evening. Haven't you done the shopping yet? No, I haven't yet. Hurry up and finish so you can go buy groceries for dinner. Understood. Every day, I'm overworked and criticized by my mother-in-law. However, when Jack or my father-in-law is around, she stops all complaints and sarcasm, pretending nothing's wrong. When they return from work, she brightly says, Welcome back. Dinner is ready, even though I was the one who cooked. Today, I tried making clam chowder. How is it? Yeah, it's good. This soup is unusual for us. My mother-in-law usually only makes vegetable soup. So my father-in-law seemed surprised when clam chowder was served. I thought I'd expand my repertoire. So I learned how to make it from Lauren. Right, Lauren? My mother-in-law looked at me with a piercing gaze. Ah, yes. That's nice. I couldn't admit that I made it, forced to go along with her story. My mother-in-law pretends she does all the household chores herself. Oh, did you rearrange the decor? It looks cleaner. Yes. With the family growing, I thought I'd tidy up a bit. That's nice. In reality, under my mother-in-law's orders, I had moved and organized heavy items by myself during the day. Without realizing it, Jack sometimes admonished me. Don't push all the chores onto my mom. You should be more proactive. You're a housewife. Deceived by my mother-in-law's act, Jack was fooled. Unable to speak the truth, all I could do was endure. Taking advantage of my silence, my mother-in-law's harassment only escalated. Today, I'll go shopping. It was unusual for my mother-in-law to offer to shop, so I wondered what was up. Then, a few minutes later, she returned and said, Lauren, I've brought some snacks. Let's have coffee, and she handed me the snacks. It was the first time Mom had bought snacks for me. And I wondered why she was being so kind today. Ah, thank you. However, I was shocked when I looked inside the shopping bag. What? What's wrong? Grinning, my mother-in-law peered into my face. I'm allergic to peanuts. Oh. Was that so? Sorry. Despite my mother-in-law knowing about my peanut allergy, she deliberately bought only peanut snacks. If I had eaten them by mistake, it would have been disastrous. Sorry. My mother-in-law chuckled continuously, seemingly amused by harassing me. I was fed up with her behavior. One day, while I was out shopping, my mother-in-law called. Yes, hello? My hand slipped and I accidentally dropped a flower pot from the balcony onto your car. Sorry about that. It wasn't on purpose, so forgive me, okay? I won't compensate though. I'm currently driving, you know? What? So, I'm out shopping in my car right now. Which means the car you dropped the flower pot on must be Jack's, right? What? No way. It seemed my mother-in-law intended to harass me by dropping the flower pot onto a car. But she mistakenly dropped it on Jack's car instead. Please check again. I could hear my mother-in-law panicking and rushing down the stairs over the phone. No way, it's true. The colors are the same and they look quite similar. It's understandable that you couldn't tell them apart from above. Wait a minute. Why is Jack's car here? Your car is always parked here. Why today of all days? That day, Jack had taken a day off and said he wouldn't use the car. So I swapped our usual parking spots to make parking smoother. It was a good thing I did. What am I supposed to tell Jack? My mother-in-law hadn't anticipated that it would be Jack's car. She was visibly flustered. I had to struggle to hold back my laughter. You can say the same thing you told me. Just say it wasn't on purpose and apologize, and I'm sure Jack will forgive you. Apologizing won't fix this. It's Jack's car. That really made me angry. So, it's okay to do whatever to my car as long as you apologize? Of course. You don't even work. So you being cheeky enough to have your own car is outrageous. You don't even need a car. What about Jack? He uses his car for commuting every day. What will he do for work tomorrow? It's a punishment for trying to harass me. You deserve it. I said it wasn't on purpose. It's pretty obvious that it was. Enough. I can't talk to you. My mother-in-law hung up the phone. Curious about what happened next, I cut my shopping short and headed home. When I arrived home and saw Jack's car, the windshield was shattered. Much worse than I imagined. Jack really liked his car and used it daily for work. So I worried he would be very upset. I hurried inside. Ah, welcome back. Despite my worries, Jack was as usual. My father-in-law was also acting normal. So they probably didn't know about the car yet. I decided not to tell Jack immediately and confronted my mother-in-law first. Mother, haven't you said anything about the car? The car? What about it? My mother-in-law feigned ignorance. Jack's car. Are you planning to keep quiet about it? You're saying I damaged Jack's car? What? I was speaking quietly so Jack wouldn't hear. But suddenly my mother-in-law raised her voice. Hearing that, Jack asked, "What happened to my car?" Apparently, Lauren damaged your car. Mother, seriously? It seemed my mother-in-law was planning to blame it all on me. Is that so? I'll go check. Jack hurried to the entrance. It's his precious car, after all. You're going to get in trouble. My mother-in-law smirked. What is this? Jack's voice came from outside, unable to hide his shock at the state of his car. Why has it turned out like this? After checking the car, Jack then confronted me. Don't be too mad. Lauren didn't mean any harm, and she said she'll compensate. What? I was appalled by my mother-in-law's selfishness. That's unavoidable, but why is the windshield shattered by a flower pot? What happened? Jack seemed more puzzled than angry. Lauren, did you do this on purpose? Mother, enough is enough. I had reached my limit. Hearing our commotion at the entrance, my father-in-law came over. What's this? It's terrible. Right? Lauren was the one who did it. What? Really? Everyone turned to look at me. Then, I said, there's something I want everyone to hear. And took out my cell phone. I started playing a recorded conversation. It was the call my mother-in-law had just made to me. Actually, I had prepared for this moment, fearing future harassment. I had bought a voice recorder and installed an app to record phone calls. And it paid off today. Hey! What is this about? My mother-in-law tried to grab my phone, but my father-in-law stopped her. Just be quiet. My phone had recorded the sound of the pot falling from the balcony. And my mother-in-law's panicked voice upon realizing it hit Jack's car. Seeing my mother-in-law's defeated slump, Jack and my father-in-law looked furious after hearing the entire conversation. Mom, what's this all about? You just said Lauren did it, didn't you? Well, that's... Confronted by the two, my mother-in-law looked like she might burst into tears any moment. Why did you even take the pot from the entrance to the balcony? Were you really trying to damage Lauren's car on purpose? No. That's when I revealed all the harassment my mother-in-law had subjected me to. So that was it. Sorry for not noticing sooner. I'm really sorry. Upon learning everything, they both apologized to me. My mother-in-law stayed silent, looking down. I can't live with Mom anymore. I'm moving out of this house. What? I don't want to see your face for a while. Oh no. It's only right. You have no right to stop this. I'm sorry. I'll apologize. It's too late. It's a shame, especially now that we're expecting a grandchild. Grandchild? Indeed, I found out a few days ago that I was pregnant. I had told Jack. But we were planning to surprise our parents and hadn't told them yet. What? You're pregnant? I didn't intend to announce it this way, but since we're leaving, I thought I should tell you at the end. I can't believe it. My mother-in-law, who had been looking forward to a grandchild, was even more disheartened when she learned of my pregnancy. So you won't let me see the baby once it's born? Of course. After what you've done, we can't trust you not to harm her. I won't do anything. You've been horrible to Lauren. We can't trust you. Jack shouted, and my mother-in-law had no reply. It's a shame, but it's your own fault. This is what happens when you engage in such foolishness. I'm sorry. My mother-in-law begged for forgiveness repeatedly. But considering everything she had done, I couldn't forgive her. I can't forgive you. Oh no. Afterwards, Jack and I moved out and started our own life. My mother-in-law seemed to remain depressed, staying in her room and hardly doing any household chores, often arguing with my father-in-law. As for me, being away from my mother-in-law allowed me to finally live peacefully. Thanks to that, I was able to give birth to a healthy baby girl as planned. We rented a house near my parents, where I could raise my child safely and happily. And she's growing up well. Our days are calm and filled with happiness. Later, my mother-in-law sent apology letters and emails, showing she was reflecting on her actions. Seeing this, I decided to let her meet her granddaughter. I was prepared to cut ties again at any hint of unpleasantness. But my mother-in-law seemed to understand and didn't say anything inappropriate. Now, I'm even considering visiting her occasionally. Getting married? Then live with me and take care of me. That's the eldest daughter's job, right? My mother said this completely selfish thing. Up until now, I had always been burdened with household chores and childcare. It seems he plans to continue to burden me with these even after marriage. I nodded and said, okay. Okay, let's live together. And I will thoroughly make him understand all the hardships I've gone through. He better regret it. Thinking this, I smirked. My name is Emma. I am 28 years old and work at a company. I was just recently proposed to by my boyfriend of 3 years, Billy. I was very happy and felt blessed, but I put off my answer. It's not that there's anything bad about Billy. He is kind and considerate, has a sense of humor, and being with him is just fun. He is too good a person for me. Why then do I hesitate to marry such a wonderful person? There is a deep reason for this. To explain the reason, I need to trace back my memories. Memories from my childhood. I was born into a typical salaried worker's family. My father was calm and gentle. My mother was not good at housework, but was an ordinary housewife. I had an older brother 2 years my senior and a younger sister 2 years my junior. It was peaceful days. Everything changed after my brother, 5 years my junior, was born. Soon after his birth, my father passed away. Fortunately, my father had a large life insurance policy, so we were not troubled by money. I remember my mother casually mentioning that the amount was enough to continue our peaceful days as long as we didn't splurge. If my mother had worked part-time then, perhaps the future would have been different. But my mother, who had always been a housewife, did not work. Furthermore, it was as if the reins were off after my father's death. And she even abandoned household chores. The house became a mess. Despite not doing household chores, my mother disliked the house being messy and chose to make her child, me, do it. At that time, my sister and brother were still young. But I had just started elementary school. Yet, my mother would say, a child who is free should do housework, and made me clean. She also pushed the care of my young brother onto me. A demanding brother, not yet 2 years old. No way could a child who had just started elementary school take care of him. I could barely go to school, but as soon as I returned home, I was immediately set to cleaning and shopping, and taking care of my brother. I also did the cooking, peeling vegetables while cutting my fingers, getting burned while stir-frying. Of course, in the beginning, nothing I made turned out well. Cleaning only made things messier, and my brother cried all the time. The food I cooked was inedible. Then my mother's scolding would immediately follow. You're useless. Why can't you do anything right? Your brother is smart and does well in his studies. And your sister has a cute face and is popular. Only you are ordinary and have no redeeming qualities. Can't you at least do household chores properly? Indeed, my brother did well in his studies even without attending cram school. My sister had a very cute face, unlike my ordinary one. But why am I, also a daughter of the same mother, the only one burdened with housework and childcare while my siblings are exempted? Why am I the only one strictly scolded for my mistakes, when even my own mother can't do much? Now that I am an adult, I understand how abnormal the situation was at that time. But as a child, I didn't understand. Being called a failure and ugly, I felt down, thinking I was a useless child. Every time I saw my siblings being loved by my mother, I tried harder, hoping to be loved myself. I worked hard at household chores and childcare, but my mother never praised me once. When my brother passed the middle school entrance exams on his own, my mother celebrated by taking him to a fancy restaurant. But the only ones who went were my brother and sister. My brother, not yet in elementary school, and I were left at home. Useless and a nuisance, stay home, my mother told us. And I cried at home eating bread while taking care of my brother. When my sister was scouted as a model, my mother was over the moon, hugging my sister and saying, "That's my daughter." Watching this, I was glared at irrationally. "Are you really my daughter?" she said to me. My mother adored my brother and sister. She denied the existence of me and my brother, denied us and pushed household chores and childcare onto us. If something good happened, it was because of my mother. If something bad happened, it was my fault. I was allowed to attend school, but I was never allowed to participate in school events like field trips. You're supposed to do the housework, aren't you? You can't just slack off. That's what she said. I had no happy childhood memories. No memories of playing with friends after school. I grew up in such an environment, and before I knew it, I had been made to do household chores until I graduated high school. My brother and sister always seemed apologetic towards me. Of course, they tried to help. But when my siblings offered to help, my mother would scream at them furiously. "It's because you're incompetent that you're bothering your siblings. Your brother is studying to enter a prestigious company. Your sister is going to be a celebrity in the future. Don't interfere." Whenever we tried to do something, my mother would blame me. Understanding this, my siblings eventually chose to say nothing. One night, as we lay sleeping, my sister, crying next to me, said, "Sorry, big sister." I hugged her tightly, and we both cried. We were just kids, really just kids. Even when I reached the age to understand the abnormality of my parents, I continued to work hard on household chores for my precious siblings. I was provided with food and shelter and was able to attend school. I thought if I endured, that was enough, and so I endured day after day. As time passed, my brother joined a top company as my mother wished and moved out. He seems to be sending money home from his salary every month. And my mother's lifestyle has improved. She frequently visits hair salons and spas and has increased her collection of brand name items. But she still does not do any household chores. I got a job after high school. Unable to attend cram school due to all the household chores, I didn't have the brains like my brother to go to university and chose a safe path. It would have been nice if I could have lived alone then, but leaving my sister, still in high school, and my brother, in middle school, was not an option. By that time, my skills in household chores had improved significantly, and I rarely made mistakes. My mother scolded me less, but she still lashed out at me whenever something displeased her. I was finally dressing up to go out, but it started raining and I couldn't. It's because Emma had a gloomy face. Such irrational anger directed at me hasn't changed, then or now. But from that time on, something inside me began to whisper, "Don't think nothing will change. Don't think I'll always be a submissive child who obeys her parents." No matter what was said, I wasn't hurt anymore, and I glared back at my mother, sometimes talking back. My mother is getting older and weaker. On the other hand, I am growing and becoming stronger. Does she think she can be the queen forever? When I glare, my mother seems to quiet down somewhat. But she still does not do any household chores. I continued to do them because my sister and brother would be troubled otherwise. Then my sister got a job and moved out. My brother, although not as adored as my brother or sister, had also graduated from university and gotten a job. When my brother was 22, I was already 27. By then, I was already dating Billy. I had briefly explained my family situation to him. After all, I couldn't go out late at night because I had to prepare dinner. "You really care about your family," Billy would say, but that wasn't it. Yes, I was working hard for my siblings, but I didn't want to be lumped together with the word family. Still, I hesitated to talk about my mother's true nature. After all, if I told him about such an intense mother, Billy might leave me. Call me a coward if you will. For me, who was not loved by my mother, Billy's presence, who loves me, is irreplaceable. I don't want to lose him, I want to be with him forever. I want to be in a normal relationship where we love and are loved. Yet, when he proposed, I hesitated. What is there to hesitate about? That's what I think to myself. My siblings have already moved out. My brother got married last year and started a family. My brother is working hard, saving money. He says he'll move out once he's saved a certain amount, and that's supposed to be soon. If that's the case, I could leave when my brother does. But thinking about that suddenly makes me feel sick. My head hurts. My stomach hurts. I feel nauseous. Ah, I see, I don't want to leave home. I have to stay with my mother. Because I'm a failure, a misfit, unloved by my mother. I have to do the household chores to finally be recognized by my mother. I shouldn't get married. I convinced myself and closed my eyes. All that spread before me was darkness. Darkness that had been spreading since I was a child. I had given up, thinking the darkness would continue. But that's not true. Suddenly, light shone through. I opened my eyes. Before me was Billy, with a gentle smile. Billy? Who said Emma shouldn't get married? Who said you can't be happy? There's no such rule, right? At least, I'll show you happiness. Huh? I will make Emma happy. Trust me, it's okay. But I'm a selfish person, so I'll definitely accomplish what I've said. I'll definitely make you happy. So, please marry me. Talking about my mother was a whim. I wanted to tell him how worthless I was and that I wasn't worthy of him. But Billy's response was unexpectedly gentle. Overwhelmed by his kind gaze, I clung to him and cried. Crying and crying, just crying. Thank you. Please take care of me, I said. That moment, my vision cleared and it became dazzlingly bright. I wanted to marry Billy. I wanted to end my current life. The time of looking down was over. From now on, I decided to look forward. With that resolution, I found myself standing in front of my mother. What? Without taking her eyes off the TV and reaching for a snack with a drink in her hand, my mother asked, "Hurry up and make some snacks. That's about all you can do." Mom, I'm getting married. Huh? It was then that my mother finally looked at me. How many days had it been since my mother really looked at me? My mother, who always commanded something, spoke without looking at me. Sitting down, she looked up at me. I, standing, looked down at her as she frowned. Getting married? What about the house? Are you abandoning your brother? I just talked to him, and he said he's moving out when I get married. I see. My mother's expression didn't change as she responded indifferently. So, we're living together. Huh? Getting married? Then live with me and take care of me. That's the eldest daughter's job, right? Saying something utterly selfish. My mother turned her gaze back to the TV as if there was no more to discuss. Not even a single word of congratulations, even though her daughter was getting married. Watching my mother's attitude, various emotions surged within me. And before I knew it, my mouth had automatically said, okay. Okay, let's live together. My mother, who had lived a selfish and self-centered life, had kicked my life around. If she wants to live together, fine. But don't think you can live as carefreely as before, right? I watched my mother drinking leisurely and smirked. After that, Billy and I got married. We registered our marriage and took a commemorative photo. We didn't have a ceremony because neither of us wanted one. After registering, Billy immediately moved into our house. Yes, the beginning of our living together. I'm telling you first, don't ever hesitate with my mother. I had said it many times beforehand, but I emphasized it again, and Billy nodded with a smile. Yeah, don't worry. After all, it was your mother who wanted to live together. I'll do as I please. Yeah. Emma, you too, you're my wife now. And this is your home. Do as you like, okay? Saying so, my husband smirked. I nodded and smirked as well. Well, shall we begin? I thought to myself, rolling up my sleeves, unknown to my mother. Day 1 of living together. What's this? Why isn't my breakfast ready? Emma, are you slacking off? Good morning, Mother. We're both leaving soon, so please prepare your own breakfast. Let's go, Emma. Right. Huh? Wait, just a moment. Not preparing my mother's breakfast, something that hadn't happened in decades. My mother was confused by the unusual situation, and I felt somewhat uneasy. It might be confusing at first to stop a habit, but you'll get used to it gradually. I nodded at my husband's words. My mother's confused face earlier was kind of funny. After finishing work and returning home, the house being messy was usual. I glanced at it and went to my room to change and then to the living room. Emma, what was that this morning? You can't even prepare breakfast for your own mother? You really are incompetent. Huh? Can't prepare breakfast? Mom, aren't you the incompetent one? What? My mother probably didn't expect me to talk back. Leaving my stunned mother alone, I briskly cleaned up the messy kitchen and started preparing dinner. When I finished, I carried the food to my room. Huh? Wait, where's my dinner? There isn't any. No. Don't get carried away just because you got married. Who do you think allowed you to grow up to be like this? Whose? Thanks to the inheritance left by Dad, right? What? What? You insolent. I'm home. Just as my mother tried to say something, my husband came home. Welcome back. Dinner's ready. Really? But I'm sweaty, so can I take a bath first? Sure, that's ready too. Huh? Wait a minute, I should go first. Ah, Mother, I'll be taking the bath first. No, wait just a. Ignoring my mother's protest, my husband headed straight to the bath. I returned to my room to lay out dinner. Then my mother started banging on the door. Ignoring her, I prepared and left before my husband came out of the bath, encountering my mother standing there imposingly. What do you mean by this? What do you mean? You don't prepare my meals, you don't clean the house, you let your husband bathe first. What's the point of living together then? That's normal. I'm married now, so I only take care of my husband. I'm no longer obligated to take care of Mom. Are you a demon? Don't you say that. What? I glared back at my mother, who kept blaming me as the bad one, and she lost her words. What about you, who dumped all the housework on a young Emma and goofed around? Aren't you a demon then? I managed to grow up safely thanks to the inheritance Dad left us. We could live off that money. But Mom, you did nothing. Do you think you raised me? Of course. How? You let me do all the housework while you goofed around. You doted only on my brother and sister and ignored me and my brother. You never once attended a school meeting. You never showed any interest in my future, just told me to do the housework. How is that raising? That's, well, sorry, but I don't feel grateful at all. So, from now on, I won't take care of Mom. After declaring that, I walked past my mother. She stood there, unable to say anything. The next day. Day 2 of living together. Emma. Why aren't my clothes washed? Because I didn't do it, so of course they're not washed. But you were running the washing machine yesterday. I did ours, mine and Billy's. Do mine too, I'm your mother. This happens right after I return from work, exhausted, and she's been playing all day. You have free time, so you should do the laundry yourself. I'm training you. Thanks for that. I'm already well trained, so no more is needed from now on. You insolent. Mother, don't you even know how to wash? My husband, who had been listening to our conversation, suddenly spoke up to my flustered mother. Huh? I know how to do that much. If you don't know, I can teach you. Come on, follow me. I'm telling you I know how. Do you really know? First, you open the lid, right? Then you put in the detergent and fabric softener here. I'm telling you, I know. Then you choose the cycle and press this button here. It's turned into a complete joke or treating her like a child. My mother was taken aback by his ignoring all her objections. And my husband kept talking with a grin. Go ahead, try it. I won't do it. That's Emma's job. Just do it. Eek. Suddenly, my husband's tone changed. The smile disappeared from his face, showing anger. Seeing that, my mother let out a small scream. You made a young elementary school Emma do all that, right? Then it should be easy for an adult like you. Just do it. Yes. Intimidated by his forcefulness, my mother ended up doing the laundry herself. It was indeed a scene we hadn't seen in decades. By the way, the amount of detergent my husband had previously put in was quite excessive. And suds were leaking from the washing machine, causing my mother to scream. But we, locked in our room, completely ignored it. The Spartan treatment for my mother continued. What? Cooking? Just do it yourself. I don't care what you want to eat. The old me, who used to do everything my mother said, had become quite strong as a reaction to breaking free from her control. My mother was lost for words at my retorts. Mother, do the cleaning yourself. What is this, underwear? How can you just leave it lying around? Wow, Mother, you've been playing so much yet your wrinkles are increasing day by day. Didn't you play outside too much instead of making Emma do all the housework? Are you even applying sunscreen? Before calling Emma incompetent, you should reflect on your own inability to manage yourself. What is this dish? Is it even edible? Emma's cooking is really delicious. You criticize others but can't see your own flaws. My husband showered my mother with his pointed words. Poke, poke, poke. It was like sitting on a bed of needles. I chuckled wryly, remembering how my mother used to nag me like that every day. And then, a month into our living together passed. Finally, my mother snapped, shouting, I've had enough. I endured for over 10 years. But her patience is just too lacking. Enough. I've had it. You two as a couple are too much. I can't stand it anymore. Get out right now. Okay, we'll leave. Huh? She probably didn't expect us to agree so readily. Maybe she thought we would beg if she suddenly kicked us out. But that wasn't going to happen. My husband and I quickly packed our bags and headed for the door. Huh? Wait, you're leaving now. What about your things? Oh, this is everything. Everything. We've placed everything else in our new home, so it's fine. What? Yes, my husband and I had actually rented an apartment separate from my family home. We lived at home with the bare minimum, ready to leave at any moment. And now, we were waiting for the get-out command. Less than an hour after being told to leave, my husband and I were out the door. Wait. What will become of me now? I don't know. Didn't you say I should leave, Mom? Well, I've already done more than enough taking care of you, Mom. You never once appreciated it. You always favored my brother and sister and looked down on me. I never felt any love from you. If you tell me to leave, of course I'll gladly go. Anyway, I don't plan to do anything from now on. It seems like you always intended to exploit me. But what's the point of me staying with you if I do nothing? My mother couldn't say anything to my words. See, you're at a loss for words now, which means to you, I was nothing more than a housekeeper. I won't let you interfere with my life anymore. But what about the living expenses? We had been paying for utilities and such while living together. If that stops, it means Mom will have to pay on her own. I don't care about that. Why not pay with Dad's inheritance like before? There's hardly any of that left. You all spent it. Lies. Mom, I know you've been spending a lot on yourself. That's why you forced me to cook budget meals. And I haven't forgotten wearing tattered clothes. Because you rarely bought me any new ones. That's. You've always done whatever you wanted. Maybe it's time you struggled a bit. Saying that, I turned my back on my mother. Wait. Goodbye, Mom. The words I always wanted to say. The words I could never say. I felt relief that I finally could. I glanced down once, then looked up. My husband was waiting for me with a smile. Without looking back, I ran to my husband, took his hand. And we left my childhood home behind. Afterwards, after squandering my father's inheritance and struggling financially, my mother first contacted my brother. She suggested living together, but he refused, saying, I can't live with a mother who tries to exploit her children. My current family is what's important to me. Upon learning that the remittances he had been sending were spent on my mother's luxury purchases, my brother declared he would stop them. And apparently, my mother screamed. Then she called my sister, but my sister bluntly cut her off, saying, Live with Mom? No way, absolutely not. Living with a mother who does nothing around the house? Impossible. I'm busy, so I'm hanging up. Later, my sister called me. Mom has always exploited you and had fun, what now? I'm sorry for always pushing her onto you, she said. Although she was loved by my mother, my sister couldn't forgive her treatment of me. Let's cut ties with Mom, you should too. She suggested, ending the call. My brother apparently also received a call from her, screaming, Take care of me, but he hung up without a word and blocked her number. Hearing that, I laughed. In the end, our mother's twisted love was not understood by any of her children. And she was abandoned. My siblings said they were sorry they couldn't do anything, but we were just kids. It's understandable that we didn't have the capacity. Later, my mother had to sell the family home. Apparently, she ran out of money and couldn't sustain her lifestyle. But it was an old house and didn't sell for much. Now she's crying about having to start working part-time, late in life. She's been crying to each of us kids in turn, but none of us are paying attention. After all the freedom she took, it's time for her to experience some hardship. Having learned from my mother's example, I vowed not to let my children suffer. I will give them plenty of love without discrimination. As I stroke my belly, carrying a new life that will soon be born, I think about this.
The sound of shattering glass jolted me from my stupor. I stood frozen in the doorway of what used to be my kitchen, watching as Brenda, my mother-in-law, hurled another plate against the wall. You useless, barren woman, she shrieked, her face contorted with rage. Look what you've done to my son's life. I flinched as another plate whizzed past my ear. Brenda, please, I pleaded, my voice barely above a whisper. This is my home, too. She laughed, a harsh, grating sound that sent chills down my spine. Your home? Not anymore, Laura. You've overstayed your welcome. I searched the room desperately for Mike, my husband of 15 years. He stood in the corner, his face a mask of indifference. Mike, I called out, please say something. He met my gaze, and for a moment I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. But then his eyes hardened, and he turned away. Maybe it's best if you leave for a while, Laura, he muttered. My world tilted on its axis. Leave? But where would I go? Brenda's triumphant cackle filled the air. Oh, I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, you've been so good at figuring out how to avoid giving my son children. The words hit me like a physical blow. I stumbled backward, my hand flying to my stomach. The same stomach that had just 3 years ago carried our child for 6 precious months before tragedy struck. That's not fair, I whispered, tears stinging my eyes. You know that's not fair. But Brenda was on a roll now, circling me like a vulture. What's not fair is how you've held my son back all these years. This business could have been thriving if he hadn't been saddled with you. I turned to Mike, silently begging him to defend me, to remember all we'd been through together. But he remained silent, his gaze fixed on the floor. A knock at the door startled us all. Laura, a familiar voice called. Are you okay in there? Relief washed over me. Helen, I breathed, grateful for my friend's impeccable timing. Brenda's eyes narrowed. Don't you dare let that busybody in here, she hissed. But I was already moving, yanking open the door to reveal Helen's concerned face. Oh, thank God, I murmured, pulling her inside. Helen took in the scene, the broken dishes, Brenda's red face, Mike's hunched shoulders, and her expression hardened. What's going on here? Nothing that concerns you, Brenda snapped. This is a family matter. Helen's arm went protectively around my shoulders. Laura is my family, she said firmly. And from what I can see, she needs me right now. I leaned into her embrace, drawing strength from her presence. They want me to leave, I said, my voice cracking. Helen's grip tightened. Leave? This is your home, Laura. You and Mike built this life together. Built it on lies and disappointment, Brenda interjected. It's time for my son to start fresh. I looked at Mike, searching for any sign of the man I'd fallen in love with. Is that what you want? I asked softly. To start fresh without me? He finally met my gaze, and the coldness in his eyes made me shiver. I think it's for the best, he said, at least for now. The floor seemed to drop out from under me. Helen's arm was the only thing keeping me upright. Then I'll go, I surprised by the steadiness in my voice. But don't think for a second that this is over. As Helen led me toward the door, I caught a glimpse of something on the kitchen counter, a stack of papers I hadn't noticed before. My heart clenched as I recognized the letterhead of a local law firm. Divorce papers. They'd already drawn up divorce papers. I stumbled, the final betrayal threatening to overwhelm me. But as I looked back at Mike and Brenda, standing in the wreckage of what was once my happy home, a new emotion surged through me. Determination. This wasn't the end of my story, it was just the beginning. I sat on Helen's floral-patterned couch, staring at the divorce papers spread across her coffee table. My hands trembled as I flipped through the pages, each word a dagger to my heart. I can't believe he did this behind my back, I whispered, my voice hoarse from crying. 15 years of marriage, and this is how it ends? Helen squeezed my shoulder. You don't have to sign anything, Laura. We'll fight this. A knock at the door made us both jump. Helen frowned, checking her watch. Who could that be at this hour? She opened the door, revealing a familiar face that made my stomach churn. Ryan Davis, Mike's right-hand man at the grocery store, stood on the porch looking uncomfortable. Laura, he said, nodding at me. I'm sorry to bother you, but there's something you need to know. I steeled myself, gesturing for him to come in. What is it, Ryan? He perched on the edge of an armchair, wringing his hands. It's about the business and the divorce papers. My heart raced. What about them? Ryan took a deep breath. I overheard Brenda talking to Mike. She's been planning this for months, Laura. She convinced Mike to transfer most of the business assets to her name to protect them from the divorce settlement. The room spun. I gripped the arm of the couch to steady myself. That's not legal, is it? Helen, ever practical, was already reaching for her phone. We need to call a lawyer now. But Ryan wasn't finished. There's more. Brenda's been sabotaging the business, turning away loyal customers, mismanaging inventory. I think she's trying to run it into the ground. But why? I asked, bewildered. That business is Mike's whole life. Ryan's eyes met mine, filled with sympathy. I think she wants him completely dependent on her. If the business fails, he'll have nowhere else to turn. The realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about getting rid of me. Brenda was orchestrating Mike's entire downfall, all to keep him under her control. "I have to warn him," I said, standing up. Helen grabbed my arm. "Laura, think about this. After everything he's done—" "I know," I cut her off. "But I can't just let Brenda destroy everything we've built, even if Mike and I are over." The drive to Mike's house felt surreal. As I pulled into the driveway, I saw him through the kitchen window, hunched over paperwork. My heart ached at the familiar sight. I knocked on the door, steeling myself. When Mike opened it, his eyes widened in surprise. "Laura, what are you doing here?" I pushed past him into the house. "We need to talk, Mike. It's about the business." He ran a hand through his hair, looking exhausted. "Look, if this is about the divorce—" "It's not," I interrupted. "Well, not entirely. Mike, Brenda's been—" "Don't start with that again," he snapped. "My mother's been nothing but supportive." I laughed bitterly. "Supportive? Is that what you call transferring business assets behind my back?" Mike's face paled. "How did you—" "It doesn't matter. What matters is that she's trying to ruin you, Mike. She's sabotaging the business, driving away customers. Can't you see what she's doing?" For a moment, I saw doubt flicker in his eyes, but then his expression hardened. "You're just trying to turn me against her," he said coldly. "I think you should leave, Laura." I stood my ground. "Not until you listen to me. Check the books, Mike. Talk to Ryan. You'll see I'm telling the truth." "Ryan?" Mike's eyes narrowed. "What does he have to do with this?" Before I could answer, a car door slammed outside. We both turned to see Brenda marching up the driveway, her face twisted with rage. "What is she doing here?" Brenda shrieked, bursting through the door. "Mike, I told you not to let her back in this house." As Brenda advanced on me, eyes blazing, I realized with startling clarity that this confrontation was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. I stood in the cramped bedroom of Helen's guest room, staring at the meager collection of belongings I'd managed to salvage from my former life. The divorce papers lay on the nightstand, a constant reminder of the battle ahead. A soft knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. "Laura?" Helen's voice called. "There's someone here to see you." Curious, I made my way to the living room, only to find Ryan standing awkwardly by the fireplace. His presence sent a mix of emotions through me, gratitude for his help, but also a painful reminder of the life I'd lost. "Ryan," I said, forcing a smile, "what brings you here?" He shifted uncomfortably, glancing at Helen before meeting my eyes. "I've got some news about the store." "It's not good, Laura." My heart sank. "What's happened?" Ryan took a deep breath. "Brenda's been making changes, big ones. She's fired 3 longtime employees, including old Mr. Jenkins." I gasped. Mr. Jenkins had been with the store since Mike's father owned it. "She can't do that." "She says she can," Ryan replied, his voice tight. "And that's not all. She's canceling orders from local suppliers, trying to switch to cheaper, mass-produced stuff." The room spun. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. "But that'll destroy everything Mike's father built. The whole community relies on those connections." Helen sat beside me, her hand on my arm. "Laura, maybe it's time to let this go? It's not your fight anymore." I shook my head vehemently. "No, I can't. That store isn't just a business. It's the heart of this town. I won't let Brenda destroy it." Ryan cleared his throat. "There's more. I overheard Brenda talking to her lawyer. She's trying to get Mike to sign over his remaining shares to her. If she succeeds, she'll have complete control," I finished, my voice barely above a whisper. The weight of the situation pressed down on me. I stood up, pacing the room. I need to do something. But what? Mike won't listen to me, and Brenda's got her claws in so deep. Helen's eyes lit up. "What about the divorce papers? You haven't signed them yet, right?" I nodded slowly, realization dawning. "So technically, I'm still co-owner of the business." Ryan leaned forward, excitement in his voice. "Exactly. You could challenge Brenda's decisions, maybe even stop the transfer of shares." For the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. "I need a lawyer," I said, determination filling my voice. Helen was already reaching for her phone. "I know just the person, tough as nails and hates bullies. She'll eat Brenda for breakfast." As Helen made the call, I turned to Ryan. "Thank you for telling me all this. I know it can't be easy, caught in the middle like this." He shrugged, a small smile on his face. "The store means a lot to me too, Laura, and, well, you've always been kind to me. Unlike some people," he added, his expression darkening. I I was about to respond when Helen's excited voice cut through the room. "Laura, the lawyer can see you tomorrow morning. First thing." A surge of energy coursed through me. "Perfect. Ryan, can you get me copies of the store's financial records? Anything that shows what Brenda's been doing?" He nodded eagerly. "I'll have them for you by tonight." As Ryan left and Helen bustled about, making plans and muttering about showing that what's what, I felt a strange calm settle over me. The pain of Mike's betrayal was still there, a dull ache in my chest, but now it was overshadowed by a fierce determination. I picked up the divorce papers, running my fingers over Mike's signature. For a moment, I saw us as we once were, young, in love, full of dreams for our future in the store. "I'm sorry, Mike," I whispered, "but I won't let her destroy everything we built, even if I have to fight you both to save it." With a deep breath, I set the papers down and turned to face Helen. "All right," I said, my voice steady. "Let's get to work. We've got a battle to win." I stood outside Sherman's grocery, my heart pounding as I watched customers trickle out, their faces etched with disappointment. The store that had once been the pride of our town now looked shabby and neglected. Taking a deep breath, I pushed open the door, the familiar bell chime now sounding more like a death knell. Inside, the shelves were half empty, and what little produce remained looked wilted and sad. I caught sight of Ryan behind the counter, his face lighting up when he saw me. "Laura?" he said, relief evident in his voice. "Thank God you're here. It's been a nightmare." Before I could respond, a shrill voice cut through the air. "What is she doing here?" Brenda emerged from the back office, her eyes narrowing as she spotted me. "I thought I made it clear you're not welcome here anymore." I straightened my spine, meeting her gaze. "I'm still co-owner of this business, Brenda, and from what I can see, it needs all the help it can get," she scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "We're doing just fine without your interference." "Are you?" I challenged, gesturing to the empty shelves. "Because it looks to me like you're running this place into the ground." Brenda's face flushed with anger, but before she could retort, the bell chimed again. We all turned to see Mrs. Hawkins, one of our oldest and most loyal customers, enter the store. "Oh, Laura, dear," she said, her face lighting up. "It's so good to see you. I was hoping you might be back." I smiled warmly at her. "It's good to see you too, Mrs. Hawkins. How can we help you today?" She hesitated, glancing around the store. "Well, I was hoping to get some of that lovely local honey you always stocked, and perhaps some fresh vegetables for my famous casserole." My heart sank as I realized we had neither. But before I could speak, Brenda jumped in. "I'm afraid we've had to make some changes to our inventory," she said, her voice sickly sweet. "But I'm sure we can find you some alternatives." Mrs. Hawkins frowned. "Alternatives? But I've been buying the same products here for years. My Harold, God rest his soul, always said Sherman's was the best store in the county because of its local touch." I saw an opportunity and seized it. "Mrs. Hawkins, I promise you we'll have your honey and fresh vegetables back in stock by next week. Won't we, Ryan?" Ryan nodded eagerly, ignoring Brenda's glare. "Absolutely. I'll make the calls myself." Mrs. Hawkins beamed. "Oh, wonderful. I'll be sure to tell everyone at the senior center. We've all been so worried about the changes here." As she left, promising to return, Brenda rounded on me. "How dare you?" she hissed. "You have no right to make promises about this store." "I have every right," I shot back, "and I won't stand by and watch you destroy everything Mike's family built." "Mike agrees with my decisions," Brenda sneered. "He knows what's best for the business." As if summoned by her words, the door opened again, and Mike walked in. He stopped short when he saw me, his face a mix of emotions I couldn't quite decipher. "Laura?" he said, his voice uncertain. "What's going on?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. "Mike, we need to talk about the store, about us, about everything." Brenda immediately latched onto his arm. "Mike, darling, you don't have to listen to her. Remember what we discussed?" But Mike's eyes were fixed on me, and for the first time in months, I saw a flicker of the man I'd married. "No, Mom," he said quietly. "I think it's time I heard what Laura has to say." The tension in the room was palpable as Mike, Brenda, and I faced each other. I knew that whatever I said next would determine not just the fate of the store, but the course of all our lives. Taking a deep breath, I began to speak, my voice steady and determined. Mike, there's something you need to know about what's really been happening here. The tension in the store was suffocating as I laid out everything I knew about Brenda's machinations. Mike's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and finally, a dawning horror as the truth sank in. That's impossible, he stammered, looking between Brenda and me. Mom, tell her she's wrong. Brenda's face was a mask of indignation. Of course she's wrong. This is nothing but a desperate attempt to save her own skin. But I wasn't backing down. Ryan, I called out, show Mike the books. Ryan hesitated for a moment, then nodded, pulling out a stack of papers from under the counter. I'm sorry, Mr. Sherman, but Laura's telling the truth. I've been keeping track of all the changes and, well, see for yourself. Mike's hands shook as he flipped through the pages. I could see the moment reality hit him. His shoulders sagged, and he looked years older in an instant. How could you do this? He whispered, turning to Brenda. This store was Dad's legacy. Brenda's mask slipped, revealing a flash of panic before she regained her composure. Everything I've done has been for your own good, Mike. You needed to learn to stand on your own 2 feet, away from her influence. My influence. I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. I've been gone for weeks, and look what's happened. The store's falling apart, Mike, and it's not because of me. Before Mike could respond, the door burst open. A group of angry-looking customers stormed in, led by Mr. Jenkins, the employee Brenda had fired. Sherman, Mr. Jenkins bellowed, we want answers. Half the town's talking about how you've run this place into the ground. The situation was spiraling out of control. I watched as Mike, overwhelmed, stumbled back against the counter. I don't understand, he muttered. How did it get this bad? Seizing the moment, I stepped forward. Everyone, please. I know you're upset, and you have every right to be, but yelling won't solve anything. Give us a chance to make this right. Mr. Jenkins narrowed his eyes. And how do you plan to do that, Laura? Last I heard, you weren't even part of this business anymore. I took a deep breath, aware that my next words could change everything. I'm still co-owner of this store, and I promise you, starting today, things are going to change. Brenda's shrill laugh cut through the air. Co-owner? Not for long, dear. Once those divorce papers are signed. I'm not signing them, I interrupted, my voice steady. The room fell silent, all eyes on me. In fact, I'm going to fight this divorce with everything I have. This store, this community, it's my home, and I won't let it be destroyed. Mike's head snapped up, his eyes wide with surprise. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd fallen in love with, buried beneath years of his mother's manipulation. Laura, he said softly, I don't know what to say. You don't have to say anything right now, I replied, but we need to act fast if we're going to save this business. Turning to the crowd, I continued, I'm asking for your trust and your patience. Give us 2 weeks. If we can't turn things around by then, well, I'll step aside for good. A murmur ran through the group. Finally, Mr. Jenkins spoke up. 2 weeks, Laura, not a day more. As the crowd dispersed, I felt a mix of relief and terror. What had I just committed to? Ryan approached, a tentative smile on his face. That was incredible, Laura, but how are we going to do this? I glanced at Mike, who was staring at the financial records with a lost expression, then at Brenda, whose face was twisted with barely contained rage. I don't know yet, I admitted, but I do know we can't do it alone. Ryan, start calling our old suppliers. See who we can win back. I'll reach out to Helen. We're going to need all the help we can get. As I turned to leave, Mike's voice stopped me. Laura, wait, I want to help, if you'll let me. I met his gaze, seeing a glimmer of the man I'd once known. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Okay, I nodded. Let's save our store. The past week had been a whirlwind of activity. Ryan and I had been working around the clock, reaching out to old suppliers, mending fences with disgruntled customers, and trying to breathe life back into Sherman's grocery. Mike had been helping too in his own hesitant way, but I could see the toll it was taking on him. I was restocking shelves when I heard the bell chime. Looking up, I saw Mike enter, his face etched with worry. Laura, he said, his voice tight. We need to talk. My heart sank. I'd been waiting for this moment, dreading it. Okay, I replied, setting down the can I was holding. What's on your mind? Mike ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I remembered all too well. It's about the business. The numbers. They're not adding up. I frowned. What do you mean? Ryan and I have been going over the books every night. That's just it, Mike said, his voice rising. I've been looking at them too, and there are discrepancies, large ones, and they all seem to lead back to you. The accusation hit me like a physical blow. What, Mike? That's impossible. I would never. Then explain this, he interrupted, pulling out a stack of papers. These transactions, all made in the weeks after you left. Thousands of dollars, Laura. Where did it go? I stared at the papers, my mind racing. I don't understand. I never made these transactions. Mike's eyes hardened. Don't lie to me, Laura. Not now. Was this your plan all along? To bleed the business dry before the divorce? The injustice of it all made my blood boil. How dare you, I hissed. After everything I've done to save this store, how can you even think that? Because the evidence is right here, Mike shouted, waving the papers. God, I was such a fool to trust you again. The store had gone silent, customers watching our confrontation with wide eyes. I could feel everything I'd worked for slipping away. Mike, I said, fighting to keep my voice steady, think about this. Who else had access to the accounts? Who's been trying to sabotage this business from the start? I saw the moment of doubt flicker across his face, quickly replaced by anger. Don't you dare try to blame my mother for this. She's been nothing but supportive. Supportive? I laughed bitterly. Is that what you call manipulating you into serving me divorce papers behind my back? Mike froze. What are you talking about? With shaking hands, I reached into my bag and pulled out the divorce papers I'd been carrying with me. These, Mike, the ones your mother had drawn up weeks ago without my knowledge, the ones you signed. The color drained from Mike's face as he stared at the papers. I never signed these. What? Laura, I swear, I never signed these papers. I didn't even know they existed. The realization hit us both at the same time. Brenda, we said in unison. Just then, the store's phone rang. Ryan answered it, his face growing pale as he listened. Mike, he said, holding out the receiver. It's the bank. They say there's been a large withdrawal from the business account. They need your authorization immediately. Mike lunged for the phone, but I grabbed his arm. Wait, I said urgently. Think about it. Who else has access to that account? Understanding dawned in Mike's eyes, followed quickly by horror. Without another word, he bolted for the door, leaving me standing amidst the chaos of the store. My mind was reeling. Brenda had gone further than we'd ever imagined, forging signatures, embezzling money. But why? What was her endgame? As I watched Mike's retreating figure, I knew we were hurtling towards a confrontation that would change everything. The store, our marriage, our entire lives hung in the balance. Taking a deep breath, I turned to Ryan. Call Helen, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Tell her to meet us at Mike's house. It's time to end this once and for all. My heart pounded as I raced towards Mike's house, Helen and Ryan close behind. The evening sky was darkening, mirroring the storm brewing inside me. As we pulled up, I saw Mike's car in the driveway, alongside Brenda's sleek sedan. They're both here, I said, my voice tight with tension. Helen squeezed my shoulder. We're right behind you, Laura. Whatever happens, we've got your back. Taking a deep breath, I marched up to the front door and threw it open without knocking. The sound of raised voices led us to the living room, where we found Mike and Brenda locked in a heated argument. How could you do this? Mike was shouting, his face red with anger. Your own son. Brenda's eyes widened as she saw us enter. What are they doing here? She hissed. This is a family matter. We are family, I retorted, stepping forward, and it's time for the truth, Brenda. All of it. Mike turned to me, his eyes wild with a mix of emotions. Laura, I'm so sorry. I had no idea, the things she's done. Brenda's composure cracked. I did it all for you, Mike, to protect you from her. She jabbed a finger in my direction. She was going to ruin everything, just like she ruined your chance at having children. The room fell silent. I felt as if I'd been slapped. Is that what this is about? I whispered. Our miscarriage? Mike's face crumpled. Mom, how could you? That wasn't Laura's fault. It was no one's fault. But Brenda was beyond reason now. She took everything from you. Your future, your legacy. I had to do something. So you decided to destroy the business? Ryan interjected, his voice thick with disbelief. How does that help anyone? Brenda's laugh was borderline hysterical. The business? That was just the beginning. Once it was gone, Mike would have nothing left. He'd have to start over with me by his side, the way it should be. The realization of Brenda's plan hit me like a tidal wave. She hadn't just been trying to get rid of me, she'd been systematically dismantling Mike's entire life, all to keep him dependent on her. Mike staggered back as if physically struck. "My God," he murmured, "all these years, everything you've done." I stepped forward, placing myself between Mike and Brenda. "It's over, Brenda. We have proof of everything. The forged signatures, the embezzlement. You can't talk your way out of this." For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me, but then something in her seemed to deflate. "You'll never understand," she spat. "A real mother would do anything for her child." "No," Mike said, his voice stronger now. "A real mother wouldn't destroy her child's life for her own selfish needs." Brenda's face contorted with rage. "Selfish? I gave up everything for you, and this is how you repay me?" She turned to me, eyes blazing. "This is all your fault. You turned him against me." Before I could react, Brenda lunged forward, her hands outstretched as if to claw at my face. I stumbled backward, but Mike was faster. He stepped between us, catching his mother's wrists. "That's enough," he roared. The authority in his voice seemed to shock even Brenda into silence. "You're going to leave now, Mom, and you're never coming back." As Ryan and Helen moved to escort Brenda out, I watched the woman who had caused so much pain and destruction crumble before my eyes. For a moment, I almost felt pity for her. The slamming of the front door echoed through the house, leaving Mike and me alone in the sudden silence. We stood there, the weight of everything that had happened pressing down on us. Finally, Mike turned to me, his eyes brimming with unshed tears. "Laura," he whispered, "I don't know if I can ever make this right, but I want to try, if you'll let me." I stared at him, my emotions a whirlwind of anger, hurt, and a tiny flicker of hope. As I opened my mouth to respond, I realized that this moment would define not just our future, but who I was going to be from this point forward. The choice was mine, and mine alone. 6 months had passed since that fateful night when Brenda's web of lies unraveled. I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my blazer, hardly recognizing the woman staring back at me. Today was my first day as a social worker, a path I never imagined I'd take. The doorbell rang, and I opened it to find Helen beaming at me. "Ready for your big day?" she asked, pulling me into a hug. "As ready as I'll ever be," I replied, my stomach fluttering with nerves and excitement. As we drove to the community center, Helen filled me in on the latest town gossip. "Did you hear about Brenda?" she asked hesitantly. I tensed. "What about her?" "She's moved to Florida. Apparently she's not speaking to anyone from town anymore." I nodded, a mix of emotions washing over me. Brenda's actions had caused so much pain, but in a way, they'd also set me free. "And Mike?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Helen's expression softened. "He's still trying to salvage the store. Ryan's been a big help." We pulled up to the community center, and I took a deep breath. "This is it," I said, more to myself than Helen. "You're going to be amazing," Helen assured me. "Those people in there need someone like you. Someone who understands what it's like to overcome adversity." As I walked into the building, my mind drifted back to the night everything changed. Mike's plea for a second chance had hung in the air between us, heavy with years of hurt and betrayal. In that moment, I'd made a choice, not just about our marriage, but about the woman I wanted to be. "I can't go back, Mike," I'd told him, my voice steady despite the tears in my eyes. "But maybe we can both move forward." The next few months had been a whirlwind of change. Mike and I had decided to separate, but amicably. We worked together to save the store, rebuilding trust not as husband and wife, but as business partners. And in the process, I discovered a strength in myself I never knew existed. Now, as I stood in front of my first group of clients, women who'd faced their own battles with manipulative relationships and shattered dreams, I felt a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. "Welcome, everyone," I began, my voice stronger than I expected. "My name is Laura, and I'm here to help you navigate the challenges you're facing. But more than that, I'm here to remind you of the strength you have within yourselves." As I shared my story, the manipulation, the betrayal, the journey to self-discovery, I saw recognition in their eyes. These women understood, in a way no one else could, the courage it took to reclaim your life. "It's not easy," I told them, "but you are not alone, and you are so much stronger than you know." After the session, as I gathered my things, I noticed a familiar figure hovering in the doorway. Mike stood there looking uncertain. Laura, he said softly, I hope it's okay that I came. I wanted to see you in action. I felt a flutter in my chest, but it wasn't the ache of lost love. It was pride in myself, in how far I'd come. Thank you for coming, Mike, I said sincerely. He smiled, a hint of sadness in his eyes. You're amazing, you know that? These women are lucky to have you. As we walked out together in comfortable silence between us, I realized something profound. The revenge I'd once craved against Brenda, against Mike, even against life itself for the hardships I'd faced, it had transformed into something far more powerful. I'd found my purpose, my strength, my voice. Standing in the warm afternoon sun, I turned to Mike. I forgive you, I said, the words lifting a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying, and I forgive myself too. Mike's eyes widened in surprise, then filled with understanding. Thank you, he whispered. As we parted ways, Mike to the store, me to meet Helen for a celebratory dinner, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The journey had been painful, filled with betrayal and heartache, but it had led me here, to this moment, to this version of myself. I was Laura Collins, survivor, social worker, and architect of my own happiness, and my story was far from over.